Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 295 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second minute podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd Beard. With me tonight, she's amazing. She's wonderful. Again, she's patient. She's the greatest hostess in the world, Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
So Weer'd, I'm going to need you to turn it down from whatever rating you are to 10. Because, as the kids say, you're being extra right now.
Well, for those listening to the blooper reel, I have an excuse.
So how am I doing? You ever have a weekend that is pleasant and productive, and really nothing bad about it, but at the same time, when it's done, you're exhausted, and you're going, thank God that's over?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's me. Of course, I'm also operating on like 5 hours of sleep, so there's that.
Oh, me too.
Well, I don't know what your problem was. I got started, I kind of got sucked into writing before anyone gets excited. It isn't anything that I can sell, and it was just, I went into a rabbit hole. And it was one of those things where I'm writing, I'm in the zone, and you know, I look at the clock, and every time I look at the clock, it's like 30 minutes later, and it reaches a point where it's like, oh, yeah, it's gonna be dawn soon. I should probably be getting to bed so that I have minimal functionality during the day. And I'm not as dead tired as I normally am when I stay up way too late, but I'm gonna be crashing early, so... that's how I'm doing. Yeah, surprisingly well, but really wrung out. How are you?
For me, we did another a night, one of the first night recordings we've done of Handgun Radio for a while, and I got quite the second wind after we wrapped, and just like I was just editing the show and just working on it, and then I suddenly realized I should probably stop and go to bed because I'm a morning person, and so sleeping in for me is, oh my God, I slept in until 7. But yeah, today I got a lot done because my daughter is up in Maine because it's the start of spring break here, and the start of spring break in Massachusetts and Maine is Patriots Day, and I was talking about this in chat, and I think it was Matt from Geeks Gadgets and Guns said to me, "Hey, you should do a little bit on Patriots Day because there are very few states that celebrate it. Actually, more than I thought. When I was a kid, it was specifically stated that it was only Maine and Massachusetts that celebrated it, and Maine. And the only reason why it's Maine was because Maine was part of Massachusetts until the Missouri Compromise, and so the two states were connected, even though they do not share a physical border. But this was the age of sail, so it's close by an ocean. So yeah, it is the day that is celebrating the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which was the first battle of the Revolutionary War. The shot heard around the world, and here in Massachusetts, it's actually, I mean, they had the marathon. Don't really care, but they also do a lot of reenactments in Lexington and Concord along the Freedom Trail, which is a historical walkway that has lots of famous houses and restored areas that are denoted. It's a really, really cool place to go, especially this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I guess, recently. Connecticut joined us in celebrating it, and Florida, Wisconsin, and North Dakota, I believe, all observe it, but it is not a holiday, or at least a bank holiday, if you will.
So this actually ties in to, it solves a mystery, because it was, I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, but I was driving through the county seat on an errand, and I noticed that there were the little plastic flags posted like every 20 feet or so along the main street. And I had no idea what they were for. And, you know, I was driving Mom on an errand, and she had no idea. We couldn't think of any sort of patriotic holiday or observance that happens in April. And so, I mean, it's a little bit early, but that's probably what that was for. So now I know.
Well, there. So happy Patriots Day, Aaron.
No, Weird. The proper response is, and knowing is half the battle.
And knowing is half the battle. And G.I. Joe are Patriots.
The other half of the battle is evenly split between red lasers and blue lasers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the red lasers and blue lasers. I mean, it's good to know that. I mean, I guess incoming fire has the right of way, but it's also good to know that whether it's friendly fire or not. All right, so we have a lot of news, and I mean, Aaron's pointing out that how can I do a segue here, and I could go, but the G.I. Joe, they fight terrorists, and there has been an issue. I don't know if it's a true terrorist attack, so to speak.
I mean, I read the article and I didn't think so. I think this is just someone with a problem, and I don't know if it's a psychological problem or just an anger problem, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I don't think this was a terror issue.
The lead one does not appear to be. I have two stories in the show notes out of Sydney, Australia, a country that has banned pretty much all the guns, and not all the guns. There's actually a pretty thriving gun culture in Australia, but they've been given a rough go, and the country keeps trying to enact stricter bans to try to cut down on the crime of criminals who don't care. And in this case, the criminal was a homeless man with mental illnesses. And
say the words. He was previously known to police.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, at this point in the police's defense, he had never been, well, I don't know if this is defense or not, but he'd never been arrested or charged. Of course, the article does say, in his home state, so I don't know if they're using weasel words, but the point being, this is someone who is known to the police, and but didn't have a record, whether he snapped or the police weren't doing their job. We're going to find out in the next few days.
Yes, but he entered a mall in Sydney and started stabbing people, and unfortunately managed to kill 6 of them and wounded. Let's see, what's the number for the wounded? There was quite a few wounded as well. And was continuing to stab until an officer, a female police officer. I will note. I will just say that there's been some recent stories that have floated around that are kind of speaking ill of female police officers, and I don't agree with that. There are bad officers, and they come in all genders. And in this case, this female officer confronted him, asked him to stop. He did not stop, and he effed around and found out and assumed room temperature. So
and pray tell, Weird, how did she stop him?
With her sidearm.
Yes, with a gun.
Correct. That is a great point. Is that yes? If this had happened in Texas or Indiana, may I say, this probably wouldn't have gotten quite as bad as it did, because they wouldn't have to wait for the person with the gun to show up to stop them.
Yeah, there's a video of a bystander who has the guy cornered on an escalator, and actually, I don't really want to say bystander, a Good Samaritan, maybe. He's got, they call it a bollard. I don't know if I would call it that, but it looks like one of those things that you use and in order to corral people, and it's got the little extendable tape. So you can create the curvy thing for the lines. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
So anyway, he's got that, and he's holding it sort of like a battering ram, really, in an upright position. And so kudos to this. I mean, he's not really unarmed. It's melee weapon versus melee weapon, but still, an improvised heavy thing versus a maniac with a knife. Kudos to this man who helped delay the maniac long enough for the police to actually arrive. And one thing I do want to touch on is that usually in situations like this, the family members of the assailant, if the assailant becomes the decedent, they usually say something along the lines of, well, the police didn't have to kill him. Why did they do that? But, and I think this points to the perp's mental state. When the family says that the killer's actions were horrific, we're trying to comprehend what has happened, but we have no issues with the officer who shot him. She was only doing her job to protect others, and we hope she is coping all right. So, first of all, that's incredibly gracious of them, because they're not just saying they don't have a problem, but we realize it's traumatic to kill a person, even in the line of duty. We hope that she doesn't get wrecked by it. But, again, when the family says, yeah, you did nothing wrong, one of two things is going on. Either they are really super, moral and law and order and things like that, which I'm not ruling out, or they could be going, yeah, this is family business, but the guy had issues, and we're not surprised it came to this.
Yeah, that is correct. And I'm looking right now at some pictures, because interestingly enough, the picture on this one, he's wearing different clothing than in every other photo I'm seeing that's allegedly this guy. Oh, no, never mind. There must have been another stabbing in Sydney, which does it, it might be this other guy.
You're the one who posted the links, but yep. Yes.
No.
There was
I searched Sydney stabbing, and I'm just saying that the picture in the link to the first story in the mall, the fatal mall stabbing, was it does appear that he's using a kitchen knife, not a zombie knife or a machete. It could be wrong. It could be a fixed blade fighting knife of some sort, but I don't know. In the case of this next story, there was also another stabbing in Sydney, just I think a day later.
I thought it was closer to 3.
Probably.
Because this most recent one happened literally today as we record this, Monday the 15th.
Okay.
And the other one happened on Saturday.
Yes.
So 2 days.
Mm-hmm. But either way, close succession, there was another stabbing. In this case, the attacker was it was in a church. It was it was an Assyrian church. I couldn't quite find a specific name for this derivation. It looks like an Eastern Orthodox, the way the priest is dressed.
Yeah, I mean that was all I could get. I tried to do some dig up some information. I couldn't find it, but yes, this is very much Eastern Orthodox. Some sort of Eastern, as opposed to Roman Catholic. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't get that awesome a beard if you're Roman Catholic.
It is a very nice beard. And yes, but it's actually the bishop was the one leading the service, mm-hmm. and he's standing at the altar leading a service, and this man who is not a member of the church comes up and stabs him, and I believe stabs a number of other people as well before he was subdued and arrested. And
well, I mean, based upon the video, you've got the bishop who's up at the pulpit giving a sermon, and this man comes up and just starts stabbing him, and he's doing the classic, overhead, up and down stab. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole bunch of people get up, and it looks like they run to pry the attacker off. And that's probably where the injuries happened. I mean, who knows? He might have wanted to go after them anyway. But, it's like, you're trying to prevent me from murdering this man. I'm going to fight you. That is likely where the other injuries came from. Mm. But I can't seem to find any sort of motivation for this.
Well, they haven't even released the shooter's name
Stabber, not shooter.
Stabber, pardon me. Thank you so much. But the attacker's name, and so yeah, it is hard to say. I have a suspicion of which I will not voice here because it is entirely unfounded. But we shall we shall see what's going on, and we'll update if we do find out on if this guy did have a motivation besides what potentially was the motivation for the mall stabber, which is just he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Well, one of the things that I observed, because I went to this link and I watched some of the video, and after the stabbing, there was apparently some rioting, and I wasn't sure why there would be rioting. If your assumption is the same as my assumption, that would at least make sense. I am guessing that this is religious tension, we'll say.
That would be my guess, and that's a very diplomatic way of putting it, so that we don't need to step too far in onto what flavor of religious tension. But I think anybody who's been paying attention knows what we suspect. So we shall see. Though again, there is any number of forms of religious tension that could cause a differing opinion as well. So,
well, yes, and I agree, but just trying to figure out, okay, if someone just stabs a priest out of the blue, outrage, yes. Why does that turn to riot? And so the simple and potentially incorrect answer is religious tension.
Yes.
So, please, I would love to be wrong. We've got so much conflict in the world today. I want to be wrong.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's not even in the purview, but yeah, we're recording this pretty much directly after the Iranian drone strike on Israel, which is definitely I think should be giving everyone a little bit of pause.
Yeah, okay, I wasn't going to bring this up, but all I'm going to say on the subject is I have a really high confidence that World War III has started. I mean, I wasn't sure with the invasion of Ukraine, but we've got the Ukraine war, and we've got Iran attacking Israel, and we've got China doing all sorts of posturing, and it seems like I mentioned before that it seemed like we were living in the era where there were maps with lots of arrows, and it was titled, events leading up to, and I think we've left that portion, and I think things are going to kick off. I'm not saying that we're about to be bombed or whatever, but it's just, when I say World War III, I mean we're going to be in for a bumpy ride of many years of just conflicts across the globe, because well, I don't want to get too under the soapbox, but it seems like humanity's natural inclination is towards violence and warfare, and the prolonged period of peace we have had over the past few centuries. I mean, yes, I even setting World War I, World War II, whatever aside, we have had long eras of peace and prosperity, and that is unfortunately an aberration, not the rule. We are a violent species. We are predators, and we will prey upon ourselves if we don't have another option. So to wrap this up and tie this into the point of the podcast, that's why you should carry a gun for self-defense, because there are two-legged predators in the world, and they may want to prey on you. Don't let them. Don't be easy prey. Fight back.
Yep. And then, furthermore, think about the people in Ukraine who were being handed rifles that they likely have never handled ever before and had zero experience with, as the Russian tanks were rolling over their border. Well, that got heavy, and I mean, this is not a light subject, but compared to what we were just talking about, this is an extremely light subject. Diving into more update with Rust, and we have let's see. Okay, yeah, we have. I thought I had them in a different order, but I do not, and this is fine. Alec Baldwin obviously has had his charges renewed for the shooting of Helena Hutchins on the set of the movie Rust, and so he has filed for a motion to dismiss. I assume in light of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's conviction recently, and if you've got an hour, Ian Runkle from Runkle of the Bailey has an amazing video on this, and I can't even touch on a quarter of the stuff going through. But essentially, Alec Baldwin filed for a motion to dismiss, and the prosecution was essentially hell no. And like one of the most damning things on there was that Alec Baldwin is offered essentially a very, very light sentence as a plea bargain. And while he was considering it, they got wind that he was planning on making a documentary about the shooting of Helena Hutchins. And they were disgusted. And he started actually also telling reporters about the deal that he was offered. And they saw that and went, this was offered not as a public appeal and all that, so we rescind the offer and we're going to prosecute you.
Well, not just that, but as part of making this documentary, he is alleged to have been actively pressuring material witnesses in the case to be interviewed, which I don't know if that's the legal definition of witness tampering, because he's not a lawyer. I don't know, but it's one of those, this is really too close to be safe, and it's definitely unsavory.
It may not be legally witness tampering, but if so, it is firmly towing the line. They also point out that Alec Baldwin was very brusque with all of the staffers and was constantly commanding them to go faster and to do things a different way and making...
he was absolutely out of control. I mean, the prosecutor is making a statement that Baldwin would scream and curse at crew members and himself. This is not a stable man. This is someone who is... okay, I'm not qualified to give any sort of diagnosis. Let's just go with, this is a train wreck of a person.
All you got to do is Google the voicemail he left his daughter. That's pretty famous. If you type in Alec Baldwin,
oh Lord, that one,
daughter, huh?
Yeah. Isn't that something like 10, 15 years old by now?
That sounds about right. Unfortunately,
but yeah, he was drunk and he called her a little pig and verbal abuse.
Yes, and it went on and on and on. And this is a voicemail. This is not talking to an actual person. This is just laying down abuse on a recorded on record. So yeah, he's not a great guy. And
I also want to make the point that I made earlier before we started recording, and I think I've made it before on other podcasts. It's that Baldwin is a producer, and so that means he's putting money into it, which means he has a certain degree of control. He's people's boss. And so, when the boss is throwing a fit and making everyone's lives hell, you kind of just gotta let him, because otherwise you could find yourself fired. And that is a very toxic work environment. And if you're constantly being berated, told that you're not good enough, told that you need to hurry up, things are going to get missed. And you made the example of the armorer giving a safety briefing, and Baldwin is just texting his wife and not paying attention. And then what did he do?
And then after the safety briefing, he loaded his firearm up with blanks, made sure that someone was recording, and this is in court evidence now. He started essentially just kind of LARPing, because it's not like number one, there's really any storyline to it, and there certainly was no coordinate. It sounds like this was absolutely impromptu because, again, it was a safety briefing, but he started doing what he thought was dramatic shooting actions with this blank loaded pistol, and it doesn't bode well for him whatsoever, because it is, he's acting extremely unsafe, and clearly was just blowing off the safety briefing, which could have saved Hannah's life. So, or not Hannah,
Helena Hutchins.
Helena, yes. Too close a names, but yes.
Hannah, Helena. Yep. I don't know that I have made that mistake, but it is a mistake I would make.
Mm-hmm. And the list is going to go on and on and on, and we really do not have the time to cover every allegation that the prosecution has towards Alec Baldwin. I will say one more. I don't know if it's in any of the articles that I linked here. I don't believe it is, but he, shortly after the shooting, he texted his wife and let her know that there had been a shooting, and that 2 people had been injured, and he noted that they were probably going to be shutting down production, but his wife and kids had planned to meet him in New Mexico and just kind of come by and visit. And he noted, well, I'll have the time off from shooting, and we could just vacation in New Mexico, which, given that he had just killed somebody, is not the look that you want to have. And also, the prosecution is extremely angry about all the interviews that he gave, especially since many of them have conflicting stories, both with evidence and with statements that he has given. So it's not looking good for Alec Baldwin, especially since Helena Hutchins. Now I'm saying Helena Hutchins. Hannah Gutierrez Reed is has been sentenced, and her lawyer, as a lawyer should, has asked for the minimum, and for the court to have mercy on the sentencing. And the court did the exact opposite and gave her the maximum allotted sentence, which is 18 months for her negligence as an armorer.
18 months. So, obviously that's over a year. So that's a felony conviction, right?
I believe so.
So, not that she would have had a career after this anyway, but now, being a felon, she can't be anywhere around firearms. So, I'm not going to say her life is over, but she is going to need to drastically reinvent herself.
Well, she was working dual roles on this set, both as a costume designer and as the armorer. And as the armorer, she did almost... There's probably a few ways she could have made it worse, but the drug use that was brought up in the trial, and the various negligence to safety and all of that, and inexperience, and the fact that there was live ammo like everywhere on this set. And oftentimes in close proximity to dummy ammo, which is probably how the live round got into the revolver. In this case, a revolver that, for everyone's assumptions, should have been completely unloaded for what was going on, if not using a rubber duck. The actual scene that was essentially a blocking shot, so there was no need for anything to look that good. They just wanted to get essentially the marks on where Alec needed to be pointing the gun for it to look the way it needed to look.
He was probably just LARPing again.
Yeah, exactly. This is just horrible. Like, every gun owner that's worth their salt that even has a little bit of training under their belt would be probably cringing like crazy and probably even saying, you know what, let's go somewhere else if we had found ourselves on the set of this movie. It just sounds like everything was really, really awful. There were other negligent discharges that had happened during it where live ammo had made it into a firearm, and luckily the ammo had been fired into the dirt. Actually, I'm trying to remember now. On the other event, I believe there was an instance where someone had a lever action rifle, and I believe it was supposed to be empty, and while they were working the action, it discharged a blank that was unexpected. So this is bad. The fact that she will hopefully never be anywhere near a firearm ever again is extremely good, because this is the kind of person that really does need to be a prohibited person. And so that's that for her. Obviously, she probably won't serve the full extent of this time, especially good behavior and all of that. But the end result will be, no, you should never ever be an armorer ever again. You are not cut out for it. I don't care who your stepdad was. And all right, now on to this is really just stuff we already knew, but it's nice that it's an official report. But there's an ATF report has just come out, and it says what we all knew, which is that federal firearms licensees are really not responsible for any sort of trafficking of illegal firearms into the criminal world. And as we said, as I've cited many, many times in a report where they had interviewed prisoners in the prison system and asked them where they got their guns. Guns are almost exclusively stolen, bought on the black market, or bought or borrowed from acquaintances.
So there's a little line in here that's buried in the middle that I would have missed if it weren't for last week's or the week before segment. And it says that the ATF released protected firearm trace data. In other words, they shouldn't have done that. But they released it to USA Today and Brady United in response to Freedom of Information requests. Now, Weer'd, when we talked about how the Washington, D.C. police, which had been selling guns, and how they had this very low time to crime ratio, which put them, into the same category of ATF Demand Letter 2 program. Well, that was one of the things that was released as part of this FOIA request. And wasn't there someone from Brady in that particular interview?
Oh, now I'm trying to remember back, but do you remember off the top of your head?
I do not, because you know how good I am with names, but I believe that there was the lawyer for Brady who was...
Yes, you are 100% correct, yes.
So the point I'm making here is that the ATF outed the DC police as being under investigation of Demand Letter 2 program for their low time to crime. So this was, and I used the pun with malice aforethought, blue on blue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm actually just going through the Brady United Against Gun Violence released hundreds of letters sent by the ATF to gun dealers across the country that sold 25 or more guns recovered at a crime scenes in a single year. The I-Team found, one said to NBD, We are not anti-gun dealers at Brady. Josh Schraff, the group's general counsel, told the I-Team, we are anti-irresponsible gun dealing. And this is how they got those letters.
Yep.
Well, that's that is an interesting grab, Aaron. Thank you so much for finding that. I would have missed it.
You're welcome.
Because I just took it as this is one of those instances where we all knew this was true, but it's good. It's good to have it in actual concrete written out terms. that works out well. Very similar to when Beto O'Rourke said, "Yeah, we're going to come take your guns." Yes, we've known that for decades. Just everyone's been saying no one's coming for your guns while they're coming for us.
Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud.
Correct. All right, now on to some good news, and these are things that are near and dear to my heart. And it sounds like they'll probably be done deals unless something else happens. But these are both bills that are at the time of this at the governor's desk awaiting to be signed. And there is there's been no political posturing saying that a veto is expected. One is from Nebraska, and the story is that it's allowing a system where school staff can be armed, and it could be anybody within the school staff that could do that. My only complaint on it is they're still going with you need to have special training and special lock boxes and things like that. And
the training doesn't bother me because teachers are under a lens because they're dealing with children. So just for optics, I understand. And I think most firearm instructors would cut them a steep discount, if not for free. The thing that I really have a problem with is that the teachers who pass through this training still aren't allowed to carry on body. They have to secure it in a biometric lockbox because biometrics never ever fail. They fail all the time. It takes some time to authorize. And again, if you're dealing with a mass shooter, well, I mean, teachers don't spend all of their time in the classroom. Sometimes they're in the teacher's lounge. Sometimes they're in the bathroom. Sometimes they're in the cafeteria. And so a gun that you can't get to because it is locked away in another room, you don't have a gun. And so this is, I think, a bone thrown towards the pearl clutchers. And, well, it should be obvious that I think that this hampers the effectiveness of armed school teachers. Maybe if there are enough armed school teachers, there will be someone nearby. But hopefully this is something that can be quietly amended or repealed and allow them to carry.
That would be great because, again, the gun. I mean, the story that Massa Youb tells about showing up to a murder scene in New Hampshire and helping the responding officers clear like dozens of firearms that were staged in various places all around the house, and pointing out the fact that the guy had like 10 guns within 5 or 6 feet of him, but none were in his hand at the moment that he was shot when he was answering his door. And so, this is a big problem. It's also one of those issues where it may also lend a little bit more problems to the school itself because, biometric lockboxes, that is a fancy thing, but almost all of them also have a key lock that overrides them. In most cases that I see, they're either wafer locks or tubular locks, and both of those are extremely easy to pick. And so, there's a possibility that these fancy biometric lock boxes may have glaring weaknesses that teenagers that spend a lot of time on the internet may figure out, especially if they happen to discover, I was, in the janitor's office to, help get a tool or find him to, because there was a clogged toilet or something like that. And I just happened to look over at something from an odd angle and realize, oh my God, there's a biometric lockbox in the janitor's office. So there's or I was in the principal's office for discipline. And while I was getting my lecture, obviously my eyes are wandering, and I discovered that the principal has a lockbox in there, and I could see that the type of keyway.
Mm-hmm. And I believe it was the lockpicking lawyer. I think it was him. He's got a series on how to defeat lockboxes, and they usually aren't very good.
Oh, I mean, I had my sister-in-law showed up one day. She was coming down for a visit, and she had they had just moved their mother from an apartment to an assisted living facility, and so they had a bunch of stuff that they had cleaned out of her place, and one of them was a lockbox that allegedly was empty, but also the key was lost. And so she brought it down to me, and this thing, I put the there's something I don't see many of the lockpicking people do, and so anybody who's into lock sports, let me give you this technique. You don't necessarily know which way the plug turns on the lock. I mean, anybody who uses a key, you stick the key in the lock and you turn, and sometimes it doesn't turn. Oh, it must turn the other way. What you can do is you put some tension on the plug, and then essentially just rake the key, the pins of the wafers really, really hard, and just overset a bunch of them, and then put your ear down by the keyway and release the tension. If you hear the pins drop, it means you're turning it the right way. If you're turning it the wrong way, you won't hear any pins drop. And so that's the way to find out if you're picking it in the right direction. I say that because this lockbox was so poorly made that when I was raking the pins just to see if I was turning it the right way, the cylinder spun and it opened. And I literally handed the rake and the wrench to my daughter and just gave her 2 seconds of instruction, and she had it open in seconds.
Also, a lot of them are made with really thin gauge steel, so if you have a pry bar, you could probably just brute force it open.
Yep, and some of them can be dropped on at certain angles, and the inertia will overcome the locking bar. And some of them, there are many that have spring loaded latches, so when you push the biometric lock, the whole thing just pops open. And so if you drop it and cause it to overcome the latch, that spring will just pop the whole door open and spill the gun out onto the ground. So yeah, this adds a lot of problems. It's certainly nice, and it might make for a good deterrence because we have read manifestos of many school shooters, and they have a high degree of fantasy and are often planning for how long will the police response time be, and not and I like the fact that this could be anybody. It's not just limited to principals or administrators or teachers. This could be the janitor. This could be the cafeteria workers. This could be literally anybody who spends time at the school. So that's awesome. What sucks is that you can't carry the gun on you.
But as I have said before, concealed carry is herd immunity against crime. And so just knowing that there are teachers with guns in the school may deter people.
Yep. Oh, for sure. For sure. There is no way that this will not deter at least some school shooters, because, I've made the line. The NRA annual meeting has happened every year forever, and for literally over 100 years. And the NRA has a bunch of detractors and a bunch of people that hate it. I mean, Letitia James and her prosecution of Wayne LaPierre, she declared the NRA to be a terrorist organization. And so if you think that strongly of the NRA, well, you got to imagine that at least some goon would decide to try to shoot up the NRA or do one of these stabbings or all that. And it never happens because, well, NRA members like to carry guns. And furthermore, there's a lot of law enforcement officers that are members of the NRA. So even in the few instances where the NRA annual meeting has been held in a gun-free zone, there's still been a whole lot of guns there with all the cops.
So pivoting from a thing that I like to say to another thing I like to say. I've been saying for about a decade now, I don't have the hard dates in front of me, but it feels about right, that it seems that gun prohibitionists believe in an abstinence-only model of firearm education.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why they advocate for that when it has been proven that abstinence-only anything, but especially drug and sex education, actually causes more problems. And so, if we don't believe in abstinence-only sex ed, why do we believe in abstinence-only gun education? And, I mean, I'm not going to claim that my words fell on someone's ears, because I know I don't have that much reach, but it is good to know that there are people out in the world who agree with me, because Tennessee lawmakers have passed a bill requiring gun safety lessons in schools.
Oh,
and so
this makes me so happy.
It really does. And so the bill requires all public schools in the state to include annual lessons involving age-appropriate and grade-appropriate instruction on gun safety, starting in the 2025 school year. Mandatory topics, and again, this is likely across the entire range of school children, is safe firearm storage, school safety relating to firearms, how to avoid injury if a student finds a gun, instruction never to touch a found firearm, immediately notify an adult if they see one. You know, those last bits really sound a lot like Eddie Eagle, don't they?
They sound almost exactly like Eddie Eagle. Yeah, no, this is awesome, and it's super great. I mean, especially in a state like Tennessee. I mean, it's a state that's got a lot of gun owners, so therefore there's a lot of guns out there. So there's also probably a lot of kids that already know about safe gun handling, because they're either, shooting animals in the back 40, or have gone to the gun range, or have gone out shooting with relatives. And so, yeah, but still, again, abstinence only is super duper dangerous, and this needs to be in every single state.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that I like to point out when people talk about when I talk about school education of firearms. This was in 2007. Yes, there was in 2007. There was a shooting that happened in was it Jamaica Plain or Dorchester? It was in Boston, either way, and these two young boys were playing in the bedroom of an older. It was the one boy's brother, and it just so happened that this boy's brother was away at a juvenile detention facility because he was dealing drugs, and drug dealers can't call the police, so therefore they often resort to violence as means to enforcing payment and fair play within the commerce of dealing drugs. And this guy was no different. He had a firearm in his bedroom, and the two boys found it and started playing with it. And the younger brother was shot and killed. And the mom faced charges because she lied to the cops and said that someone had broken into their house and shot the kid and that sort of stuff. And obviously the evidence pointed that was complete nonsense. But the bottom line is that this was in Boston, and one of the gun control capitals of the United States, a place where it is very, very difficult to get a gun permit. I guess it's been more easy now that NYSERPA has happened, but it was a very, very difficult place to get a gun permit. The permits were almost always limited, and yet there were still guns here. They weren't legally owned, but it doesn't matter. These kids weren't criminals. They weren't part of that, but they did find a gun, and they were not properly trained. And instead of having the proper respect and a respect for a firearm that hopefully this Tennessee class will teach, they started playing with it, and that was a fatal mistake. And so it doesn't matter where you are, who you are. Oh, we live in area where nobody owns guns that we know of. Well, no one owns guns that you know of, but maybe there are people who own guns, or maybe even there's a family member who has a gun that maybe even the family doesn't know about. There are too many guns out there to just assume that you're never, ever going to encounter one in your life.
Mm-hmm. So this actually reminded me of something I saw on television, I think it was last week, because I believe in calling out good gun handling when I see it. So I was watching an episode of Chicago Fire, and what happened was the ambulance team had been dispatched to a scene where, as they found out, one of the boys had shot the other one because they had found a gun, and they were playing with it, and the one boy shot the other accidentally, and he doesn't want to go to jail, so he's still holding the gun. And one of the paramedics, goes and, heroically stands in front of the gun and talks to the child so that the other paramedic can, treat the boy. And she convinces him to set the gun down. And this is the key part. When he actually, he doesn't set it down, he gives it to her. Now, in most TV shows, she'd just hold it or she'd set it down, but no, she drops the slide. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. She drops the magazine and racks the slide to eject the round. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was fantastic because I can't remember the last time I saw that on TV, especially by someone who isn't police. And so it's like, yeah, that's how you safe a gun. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that is awesome, and people get to see it. Like I gotta wonder if there is more instance. I mean, even in like the criminal element of people with the finger high up on the frame of the firearm, just because so many movies are doing it now that now it looks cool. I've certainly seen like artwork done by people who are not gun people of people holding guns with their finger high up on the frame, just because it looks cool.
Well, that's fantastic. If we can make safe gun handling cool, I am all for it.
Yeah. I mean, that is, and again, by teaching people how to safely handle guns and the fact that, walking around with your finger on the trigger, muzzling people, that sort of stuff is not cool because it's dangerous and it's stupid and it doesn't accomplish anything. So yeah, education is always the solution. And, well, speaking of education, this story was one that I'd seen floating around, and I'm like, I'm not gonna touch this because there's a meme that was going around that clearly was a staged meme or a stock image or something like that. But then a friend of mine sent me this, and there was way too many factors here. So this happened in the Cambridge Ridge and Latin High School, which is a I'm actually not sure the backstory of it, but this is like the prestigious school to go to for high school. They only take so many people, and it's just, there's been a ton of famous people that have gone through there, and it's just very, very prestigious. Everybody in Massachusetts knows about this school. Well,
I think maybe the category term for this is a prep school.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I realize now I should have done that research before the show of actually what it is, but it is a very prestigious and a very, very famous school, and which also makes me think that the school resource officer shouldn't be Officer Schmuckatelli. But I say shouldn't be because it appears that they had school research officer Schmuckatelli. I don't know if they give the name. Oh, they do give the name. I'm not going to give his name. Maybe I do. I don't know. You decide, Aaron.
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, this was dumb, and he's probably going to lose his job, but
maybe not. But either way, the officer had gone to the bathroom. It was a single bathroom, so it was not a multi-stall restroom. And like you do in many public restrooms, there is a hook generally for hanging your coat, because if you have a long coat on, you can't sit on the toilet. And instead, he decided to take his firearm out of the holster. And I assume as a school resource officer, he's wearing a duty belt. And he takes the gun out of the duty belt for reasons that I cannot explain and hangs it on the hook by the trigger guard, which we never do, for the precise reason of when he went to go get it back, he discharged the firearm.
Okay, I missed that last part. I was wondering how it managed to discharge on the hook. I missed the part that when he got it, he discharged it, and okay, that makes sense. You know, he picked it up and he pressed the trigger against the hook.
Yes.
Another thing that I missed, because my reading comprehension of this article was not very good, I also missed the key part that this was they say single staff, which doesn't make sense to me. I'm guessing they meant single stall.
Oh, single staff, and the fact that in schools there are restrooms for kids and there's restrooms for the adults.
That would just be a staff bathroom. I don't know what single staff means.
It means that it's a water closet. It is one of those ones where you go in and there's one toilet and there's one sink and you shut the door.
Okay, but what I'm getting at here is, because I didn't catch that, I actually thought he was using a toilet with multiple stalls and the general public would be involved. And so I can at least understand, okay, I'm using the toilet and I drop my pants, and if my gun is in my duty belt, then someone in a stall to whatever side he carries his gun on could conceivably grab the gun. And I can understand that. But if he's in a single stall bathroom that only the teachers use, and I don't know if the stall locks or if he locks the entire toilet room itself, there's no reason for him to take it out of the holster. And so I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt of, okay, you did a wrong thing, but I at least understood your reasoning. And now I'm going, nope, I don't understand any reasoning at all.
At this point in time, I've got to imagine that, I mean, there's, for those of you who are concealed carriers, I mean, actually is it Melody Lauer, Lima Life?
Lima Tunes.
Yes, yeah, Lima Tunes, Lima Life. She's had a number of different screen names, generally using the word Lima in them. She has some really, really good instructional videos on YouTube, or at least she did. I haven't looked them up in a while, on how to use the toilet while you're concealed carrying. She puts on a pair of yoga pants and then puts on a pair of jeans with her gun belt over it so that she can take her pants down and sit down without being immodest. And she's got some great instructions on how to deal with your firearm so that it is not either sitting on the floor of the stall where someone can clearly see it and possibly grab at it, or give you a hard time for carrying a firearm, and to stay safe. And I gotta say, like, there have been plenty of these stories that have happened. I haven't heard one recently in a while. This is, I mean, obviously before this one, it seems that it's been a while since I've heard about a police officer, leaving a firearm in a bathroom, or having a negligent discharge in a bathroom for handling the firearm as they were about to use the toilet. It makes me say that the police academies need to be teaching proper toilet skills to recruits, because this is just insane.
I know what you mean, but I'm laughing because it sounded like we need to teach the rookies how to wipe.
Yeah, how to wipe when there's a gun in your gun belt. Not how to wipe when you hang it on the hook or leave it on the side of the sink. There was a story. Oh, look at that! You found it. Oh, yeah. Throw that in the show notes.
Already done.
Yeah, Melody Lauer. She is a great person. I haven't had a chance to meet her personally, but she impresses the hell out of me. But yeah, there was a story once of a police officer who went off on duty after going to a Dunkin' Donuts because it was Massachusetts, and it was a police officer. And and then someone went into the Dunkin' Donuts bathroom and was like, "Oh, look, there's a pistol here." Yeah, not a good choice. When you put the gun on, stop touching it and keep it in the holster until it's the end of the day and you're taking it out. And even some instances, many people just leave it in the holster for days and days and days. Mm-hmm. We just need better gun safety. This is unacceptable.
So let's end on a high note here, and this one is very, very acceptable.
Yes, I told this story to my wife, and oh my God, was she gleeful. And she's obviously very friendly to the Second Amendment, and we get along very well, but she doesn't get excited about the Second Amendment the way I do. But oh boy, this one she absolutely loved. Do you want to take it, Aaron?
No, I'm going to let you take it, but what I will say is, while I don't think it was intentional, this is fantastic pre-gaming for Spike Cohen.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. So, this was from the, we talked about it a couple of shows ago that Spike Cohen and David Hogg were going to have a debate in New Hampshire, and it's out there on the internet. I haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing because the time I had, I was watching Ian Runkle talking about Alec Baldwin. But at the end there was a Q&A, and a woman came up to the mic and she introduced herself. I actually don't remember what her name is, and I'll actually, does it say in the article, so I don't have to listen to
Lily Tang Williams.
Yes. Lily Tang Williams, and she has a very, very thick Chinese accent, and she introduces herself as a Chinese immigrant who survived communism and talks about the horrible loss of human life under Chairman Mao and the horrors of the Communist Party in China. And she asks David Hogg, "Can you promise me that our government will never become as tyrannical as China?" And to David Hogg's credit, honestly speaking, I would not be surprised if he would have just lied and said that she's foolish for thinking that the U.S. government could ever be as tyrannical as China, which would be a lie. He said, "No, I can't guarantee it." And then she says, "Well, the gun debate or the debate on gun control is over because I will never, ever give up my guns. If there's a possibility that this government could turn into something as horrible as the government of China." And that's a pretty solid mic drop, and added bonus points on the fact that it's an immigrant and that it is a lady. So it's not the standard, bearded camouflage wearing hunter saying all this. And that is about as damning a rebuttal as you can get. And it wasn't even Spike Cohen's.
It's the battle of the side folders. Which will prevail? No, actually, it's not side folders. We'll do this one again. It's the battle of the folding carbines. Which will prevail? The side folding FPC or the top folding sub 2000? Listen to find out.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Monday, Monday, Monday.
You paid for the whole seat, but you only need the edge.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Oddball and his wife came out to join us over the Easter holiday weekend. Among other fun things, he brought his new Kel-Tec Sub 2000 Gen 3 carbine. As regular listeners know, I have a Smith & Wesson FPC, which I reviewed in ACP episode 245. Since we had both carbines on hand, we took this opportunity to spend some time on the range with them. So in this segment, I'd like to compare these two similar but distinctly different rifles. Both guns are compact 9mm pistol caliber carbines, with the magazine well properly positioned in the pistol grip. Both have 16-inch barrels with threaded muzzles. Both are made mainly of polymer and both fold in half. Those are the main similarities. There are some others, but that should give an overall picture. Fit and finish. The FPC is well made and has a solid feel. The controls operated solidly and without slop. While the Sub 2000 3rd Gen feels more solid than its previous iterations, it's still a Kel-Tec, though the metal trigger is an improvement. Features. The FPC is side-folding to the left only. It has a full-length top Picatinny rail with M-lock slots every 45 degrees the full length around the forend. It locks open after the last round is fired and also has a manual bolt hold open. The crossbolt safety seems to be non-reversible. As with many current Smith & Wesson M&P pistols, the trigger has a front-mounted dingus safety lever and the grip has replaceable backstraps. The non-reciprocating charging handle is ambidextrous. There's room for 2 magazines in the underside of the buttstock. It takes Smith & Wesson M&P magazines only, but comes with 3, one 17-round and 2 23-round capacity. The Sub 2000 is top-folding and the forend rotates 90 degrees left or right. The forend has Picatinny rail on the top and bottom, with M-lock slots on each side, the full length of the forend. It has a standard crossbolt safety. The reciprocating charging handle is fairly ambidextrous and allows for the Kel-Tec slap. There is no last round bolt hold open, but the bolt can be pulled back and the lever pushed left or right to lock it open. This iteration of the Sub 2000 currently only takes Glock magazines, though previous versions had multi-mag models as well. It comes with 1 aftermarket 15-round magazine. Handling and ergonomics. Other than the crossbolt safety, the FPC controls are consistent with the M&P family of pistols. It's well balanced, though with loaded magazines in the stock, it is slightly butt-heavy. In part due to that wider stock, it shoulders well. The trigger is of the standard M&P 2.0 design and is clean and crisp. Recoil was quite mild. The controls on the Sub 2000 were also positioned conveniently. There's a slight upgrade in ergonomics from previous generations. It's also well balanced and pleasant to shoot, though felt recoil was slightly heavier than the FPC. The pistol grip is Glock 19 length, which is convenient for magazine availability, but may feel slightly short for larger hands. Accuracy. Both carbines were tested at 8 to 10 yards and were more accurate than either shooter at that distance. Shortcomings. The buttstock magazine release in the FPC is reversed and magazines should be positioned bullets up for more ergonomic reloads. It would be better if it used a standard AR-style forend and would benefit from an adjustable shoulder stock. The crossbolt safety is too far forward for easy one-handed on-off operation and is right-handed only. It should come with basic backup iron sights out of the box. While having the barrel fold to the side does allow for easier optic mounting, it does make for a thicker overall package. When folded, the rails on one side of the forend are blocked and effectively useless. As a left-handed shooter, the Sub 2000 did spray me in the face with gas and particulates when firing. There's no last round bolt hold open, and while the stock is technically adjustable, it's very slight. As with the FPC, the Sub 2000 should come with backup iron sights. One of the biggest issues with the Kel-Tec is, even though the forend rotates, it only rotates 90 degrees left or right, meaning any mounted optic is sticking out to the side. A full 180-degree rotation would keep the slim folded profile the Sub 2000 is known for. Conclusions. Shooters looking for a compact PCC would be well served with either of these carbines. Some features will appeal more to some than others. For example, my everyday carry is a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 compact, so I already have an investment in those magazines. For the buyer who already has a Glock 17 or 19, the Kel-Tec would obviously be a better fit. Currently, there's more aftermarket support for the Kel-Tec, however that may change in the future, especially as the Smith & Wesson FPC gets more market share. The MSRP price difference is right around $200 and generally less than that in the retail market. However, at the price point at which these firearms sell, that difference might be a significant consideration. A clear edge to the Sub 2000 here. Overall, Oddball and I are pleased with our choices, though we appreciated many aspects of each firearm. I don't think either of us would feel put out if we'd chosen the other option. Those are my thoughts on the FPC and the Kel-Tec Sub 2000 Gen 3. Have fun and safe shooting.
I didn't come all this way for you to just be gentle with me, alright?
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
I have minimal experience with both of these, but I do like how there's advantages for each.
So I haven't shot the FPC, but as a long time sub 2000 owner, I bought a G1 back before it was a G1. There was only the sub 2000. I want to point out a few things that I've noticed about the G3. So G1 and G2 grips were Glock 17 size. This is a Glock 19 size. And I know David said this may be a problem for people with larger hands, but honestly, I think this is a good move because it means that the G3 sub 2000 can accept more magazines for greater versatility. And if you have a problem with having large hands, there are such things known as X grips, which are sleeves that you can fit over the magazine and will act as, pinky rests. And so that can extend your grip zone. David mentioned that the G3 only accepts Glock magazines, but previous generations were multi-format. I wouldn't be surprised if Kel-Tec puts out a model, in the next 6 months to a year, which accepts Beretta, SIG, and Smith & Wesson mags, just like the previous generations did. They're probably waiting to see if there's a market, because Glock is very popular because it is almost a universal platform, so that's where they're going to focus their efforts. And I guess if a lot of people are saying, hey, make this in other formats, they will probably do that. I can't agree strenuously enough with David when I say that actually, he didn't say this. I'm saying the lack of a bolt hold open feature on the sub 2000, that really bothers me. I don't know if I would specifically call it a flaw, but it is a big gaping hole. And it bothers me, and I wish they would fix that. And finally, while there may be some people who use their sub 2000s as backpack guns or truck guns, general consensus among sub 2000 owners, or at least the ones, the communities that I frequent, the consensus is that the folding feature is mainly a novelty, and it's nice to have, but it isn't often used. So, you've got two folding carbines. Of course, you're going to compare, well, what's the benefit to folding to the side? What's the benefit to folding to the top? But I think in general, it's basically a novelty, and the carbines would be just as good. You could argue would be a little bit better, but they'd be just as good if they didn't fold. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I've always liked the fact that the sub 2000 and the Smith & Wesson works the same way as when you fold it, the chamber folds away from the breech block, making it so that you can even have the gun fully loaded and it's not going to cause any problems because the round in the chamber is just going to fall out and that's that. And so the idea, and I'm trying to actually if I remember, did the sub 2K have a way to lock it in the closed position or in the open position? Or the folded position, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, I only have the experience with the Gen 1, and yes, the way it does is that when you fold it, the front sight tower has a little spring-loaded knob that snaps into a recession on the base, or maybe it's vice versa. But anyway, you've got a spring-loaded bead that notches into a recess, and that holds it in place. It's not firm, but it'll keep it from popping open under most conditions.
I just meant actually physically lock, as in with a key lock of some sort.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yep.
Not at all.
Gotcha. I always like that though, as an idea of safety. I always saw it as a nice thing. Like you could just, slide it underneath the bed, sort of idea. And you could fold it up, and that would, not only would it make it a smaller footprint, but it would also make it, another step safer from, curious fingers.
The spring is stiff enough that it would probably childproof it against younger children, but when they get into definitely the tweens, maybe even 8, 9, 10 years old, they might be able to lock it into place. So I wouldn't count it as childproofing. Maybe, young child resistant.
Yep. That's all. I just always thought that was a nice little feature on the fact that you could separate the chamber from the breech block, and that doesn't get much safer than that.
Mm-hmm. I remember one time I was at the shooting range, and the range went cold, and so this range was, well, I'm letting my bias show. I guess I shouldn't say stupidly anal, because it's really hard to be excessively safe at a gun range. And so, the rules were you have to, drop the magazine and clear the round, and then stick some sort of flag, chamber flag, I think is what it's called, into it just to show that it was unloaded. And so for me, instead of messing around with the chamber flag, I just worked the thing and basically, broke the Sub 2000 in half. And okay, there's literally no way it can fire that way. And you've got the RSO walking, and he sees it, he looks at it, and it's just like, this doesn't have a flag. It's like, but it can't fire, and he didn't care. Mm-hmm. So it was just, okay, sir, whatever you want. You require a chamber flag, I'll put a chamber flag in the gun that is broken in half, and there's no possible way a round could be chambered. Sure.
Yeah, I don't like those, or the ones that are like, oh yeah, you can only fire like one shot every 2 years or stuff like that. No, there's such a thing as FUD ranges. All right, so to continue into what's becoming an ACP tradition, we close with farming. This time, Miles talks about a subject that's near and dear to my heart: animal husbandry.
His educational career began, interestingly enough, in agricultural school, where he majored in animal husbandry until they caught him at it one day.
No, not that way.
Hi, this is Miles with another episode of the Southpaw Corner. In this episode, I'm going to be doing something weird's been bugging me for a little bit, and talk about how I got into and why I raise farm animals. In this episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit of backstory, tell you where I came from and all that. So, to start off, I had no real experience with farm animals except for a few family members had friends that had farm animals. So I got to see them once in a while, and that was about the far as it went. My wife, on the other hand, she grew up on a dairy farm, and up until the mid-90s, they were dairy farmers. In the mid-90s, with some family issues and all that, my wife was basically trying to run the farm by herself while going to school full-time and working a job full-time. Something had to give, and because of everything, it ended up being the farm. So we jump forward a few years, and we get married, and as we're driving up from our wedding up to upstate New Hampshire for our honeymoon, we are noticing a lot of farms that were not open, fields overgrown and all this. And she was lamenting, and I was agreeing with her, that it's terrible that even our pastures are getting overgrown. So we are talking about possibly raising animals again. Then, while we're up there, we start seeing all these bumper stickers for the Freiburg Fair, and just by chance it was that week, the dates that were it was that week. So we looked at our map, saw, oh, Freiburg's right there. So we went to the Freiburg fair, and we walked around quite a bit. So I went through a huge number of the barns. There's something like 28 animal barns at this fair. And we decided that we're going to do something to start the farm back up. I said there's 2 things I refuse to do. One is I do not garden. I'm not a gardener. It's people like Xander who want to do fields and gardening or huge field projects. That's great for them. It's not for me. The other thing is I did not want to be a dairy farmer. My wife told me about, as she was growing up, the fact that they never got to go on vacations and do things because they had to milk morning and night every day of the year. And I want to be able to hire a farmhand to make sure the animals were fed and watered and be able to take off from time to time and go do things as a family. So milking was out of the question. So we walk around, we look around, we decide that things that we might want to do, we might want to raise pigs, we might want to raise beef animals, and maybe goats or sheep. So as we're walking around, we're looking around, and we picked out a few things, talking to people at the fair to see what would be a good thing for us to start with. So about a few months later, we decided that we are going to try doing some beef cattle. And originally we were looking at a breed called a Blonde d'Aquitaine, a French breed, very muscular, heavy-set cow. But we couldn't find any locally, and I'm glad we didn't, because we found out that because of the neglect over the years of our fields, we couldn't even raise smaller beef cattle without supplementing hay halfway through the summer, which is not a feasible way to do it. We did end up getting a few what they call belted Galloways, and they're the Oreo cow looking ones. They're real shaggy. And we raised those for a few years, but we did realize that our pastures needed serious renovation. The fences needed to be fixed up because they were starting to sag and fall over. And so after a while, we did sell those off. We just didn't have the pasture or the fencing for it. And over the years, we have switched to a few different animals and had very good success with some and not so great success. And some of the animals that we got rid of earlier on in our 20 years of raising livestock, we wish we hadn't gotten rid of because now they are the big sellers. We have, at this point, kind of gotten out of farming. Between my injuries and illnesses, it was getting hard for us to raise them, even with the help of our kids. In the next few episodes, I will be going over the different breeds of animal we had and the different types. Like I said, we did have the belted Galloways for a couple of years, and we solely, sold them off and or butchered them for our own freezers and switched over to other animals. Cows are great things to raise, but you do have to realize that it takes about 2 years from birth to they're mature enough for being processed for food. And in order to breed beef cows, unless you do a lot of hands-on work with them, you do have to maintain a bull as well as your cows for breeding. With dairy cows, because they are handled so much and they are brought into the barn almost daily, if not daily, you can have done what's called artificial insemination. I hate that word. To get them bred where you don't have to maintain a bull, and it's a lot easier because of that. It's one less animal you need to feed. It's one less aggressive animal that you have on the farm, and it does work better that way. Like I said, our biggest problem with raising beef cattle was lack of good pasture. It would have taken us a few years of mowing and fertilizing to get the pasture back into good shape for beef cattle. Cows are very finicky when it comes to eating. They don't eat a lot of the rougher grasses and stuff along those lines. They want the nice, soft, tender bits. Other animals do better on those rougher things, and we did try a couple of those, and I will get into that in other episodes. After we had the belted Galloways for a little while, my mother-in-law did get a couple of milking cows for her, and she was the one who took care of the milking. We just did the feeding and stuff along those lines. That's it for this episode of the Southpaw Corner, and like I said, this is just kind of a primer about how we got into it, not a full in-depth about each of the different animals and the different types of care you need to do. This is primarily just how we got started into raising farm animals after the farm being closed down for about 8 years and the pastures kind of going to waste. So if you have any questions or is there anything in particular you want to know, please let Weer'd or Aaron know, and I will make sure I cover it in one of the upcoming episodes. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, unlike Miles, my tie to animal husbandry was breeding lab mice for my lab, and I really enjoyed it. I have no idea, but like Miles, I hate to garden. I mean, I've got some plants that I need to throw in the garden. I need to get my garden ready for spring, and it's just not happening, and I'm just not motivated for it. But I could totally care and feed animals, and I love breeding up animals for use. Yeah, so that's my tie to animal husbandry, and I, as a cook, also the idea of food species, it excites me. He mentioned the Freiburg Fair. That was my ag fair as a kid. That's what we always used to go to every summer, unless we were going up to my grandmother's place up in Presque Isle in very, very far northern Maine, and that they had the Presque Isle Fair, which was that's deep in farm country. So the Freiburg Fair is pretty darn cool. The Presque Isle Fair was pretty hardcore with tractor pulls and mashed potato wrestling.
What?
It's as entertaining. Oh yeah, no, like a giant above ground swimming pool with about like 8 inches of mashed potatoes in the bottom of it, and they had men and women's division. I don't recall ever watching the men's division.
So this is literally like mud wrestling or Jello wrestling, just using mashed potatoes. Using mashed potatoes
because the crop of northern Maine is potatoes. They grow a lot of potatoes up there, and let's just say that it was not willowy bikini models for the ladies potato wrestling. These were these were farm girls with strong backs. I'm just saying it was very entertaining.
I mean, Weer'd, you already have my attention. You don't need to keep selling me on it.
It was a good time. You know what, Aaron? After the show, we'll see if we can find some videos from the Presque Isle Fair.
Ooh.
And I will just say again, as a cook, I get excited about such things. I decided to post a video in the show notes of the Bearded Butchers, who have a phenomenal YouTube channel. I highly recommend you guys looking it up. But they have a video. It's an hour long, and they start with an entire cow, and they end up with what is a butcher's case full of steaks and chops ready to be sold. And that's I'm into it.
Well, you know what else we're into, Weer'd Beard?
Our listeners. We really are. I mean, it's what would we do if no one listened to this?
Well, I mean, I know that I wouldn't be doing this, but you would probably just be shouting into the metaphorical void.
I mean, let's just say that when either me or my daughter are in a room with nobody else around, there is conversation still happening. But yes, thanks to each and every one of our listeners. We really appreciate you tuning into this podcast and sharing it with friends and all that stuff. I'm stepping on Aaron's thing, but either way, thank you so much. But a very special thanks to all of our supporters on Patreon. So you're on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. They help keep the lights on, but this is a charity. This isn't us begging. We're selling stuff. We got things like early release of the podcast. We've got bonus content like the blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
We really should sell ACP merch, but we need a good logo. We had someone who was working on a logo, but that never really gelled. So
yeah, I never found one that I liked. And hey, guess what? If you want a free shirt with a rad logo on it, design us a rad logo, and we'll get you some free shirts and stuff. Like we'll make it worth your while.
I mean, I would be willing to pay the person so long as it wasn't an arm and a leg. But if you can be bought just with swag, sure.
Or name your price. I don't know. I would like a logo. I would like to show up at events with ACP swag on myself, but I can't design it. And again, I haven't. I've got a very open mind, but I also know what I don't like.
Well, we also like people who rate us on Apple Podcasts, people who subscribe to us on the platform of their choice, and we really like it when people share the show with their friends, both online and off.
And may I note, officially, Google Podcasts is gone. And if you can get the YouTube music thing to work, you're amazing, because I couldn't do it. So instead, we listen to this show on Pocket Cast. And you get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me when I can be bothered to update. I'm dealing with stuff. At Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So this outro is special for our listeners who have made it this far. David's equipment is slightly butt heavy, whereas Oddball has a thicker overall package. Our double entendres are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everybody. Bow chicka wow wow.
Oh my God. Good night.